science club and music club from Manjan Presidential School. This is our first ever product, so let's start with introducing our guest.
Okay. So my name is Mr. 𝗘𝗱𝗂𝗰𝗁𝘁𝗄𝗰, and I am a teacher of English and Global Perspectives. I've been teaching at this school since its inception in November 2021.
So he's from Jamaica, and let's let him talk about the country.
Okay, well, Jamaica is a very small country. First of all, it's an island in the Caribbean, which is a part of the Western Hemisphere. Our closest neighbor is Cuba, which is to our north. The island is approximately 1,411 square miles. Our population is approximately 2.9 million. So as you can tell from this information, it's a very small place, particularly when compared to Uzbekistan. And it's a tropical island, of course, which means we do not have seasons. We have basically summer all year round.
So how would you describe your childhood growing up there?
I grew up as an only child, which made me unique in that I think I was the only child, or maybe one of two. Growing up, I think I only knew two other children who were only child. Like me, are only children, the only children for their parents. So that made me special in a sense because my personality was not like most of my peers. So I was mostly an introvert in terms of my personality. But I essentially did the same things as all my peers did. I enjoyed the same sports, the same games, etc., etc.
And Mr. Maxwell is in our research group from Science Club. We are learning about how to write research papers there, and he has written some of them. Can I talk about your research?
Well, officially I've only written one research paper. I have done several research papers, mostly for assignments. My first and only official research paper was done in university, and the topic was the theme of nationalism in 3 West Indian novels, because I studied English and literature, so I was basically focused on literature at university. Then after that, in other courses I did at the postgraduate level, I did other research topics related to things like teaching, mostly about teaching and learning, a few about global citizenship, and then I have edited a lot of work of my friends and colleagues in different spheres. They always call me to help them to edit their work. I don't know why. So I have helped to write a lot of other research papers and articles which have been published, including poetry.
What about those interesting ones?
Well, I suppose you're referring to my own personal research that I have done.
Yes.
They weren't research in the sense of published papers, but mostly in terms of information that I have collected over the years.
So going back to your job position, what are the best and worst things that you have faced when becoming a teacher?
In terms of difficulties, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, originally I had no intention of being a teacher. I am from a family of teachers. My mother was a teacher, and 3 aunts and 2 uncles were also teachers. So growing up, I had absolutely no intention of becoming a teacher because in my mind, we had enough teachers in the family. And of course, teachers, as you may know, are not very well paid. So I had no motivation at all to be a teacher. I only became a teacher because at that particular time of my life, it was the first and most easily available job. And that was 27 years ago, 28 years ago, and I'm still a teacher, so what can I say?
And mostly people think that being a teacher is a very stressful job, so do you agree with it?
It can be sometimes, but in general, I find it rewarding to be a teacher. I remember when I was at university, my first love was economics, right? And I remember I had an economics professor, Professor Figueroa, I'll never forget. And he and I had a close relationship, so I would go to his office in the afternoons and we would talk, right? So on one particular afternoon, we were talking and he was saying, oh, you're doing an English major, so the only job you're going to be, only job you can do or you're going to get after graduating university is to be a teacher. And he said, do you know that the only income a teacher makes is psychic income? And I laughed because I found it funny at the time. But what he essentially meant is that teachers are not very well paid and that the satisfaction or the income that you will gain from teaching will not be economic or monetary terms, in monetary terms. It will be psychic, meaning the emotional or psychological satisfaction that you get from teaching. And to a great extent, he was correct. But psychic income is still very, very valuable because my ability to contribute to the lives of hundreds, or if not thousands of students like yourself over the years has given me a lot of satisfaction. Even though I can't say I'm wealthy from teaching most of my students, well, not most, but quite a few of my students are much wealthier than I am, right? Because they have gone on to start businesses or they have become professionals or have careers in fields that allow them to earn much more money than I could ever think about. But I still get the satisfaction of knowing that I have helped them on their journey. So in that sense, I would say that teaching has been a rewarding experience for me so far. So I can't say I have any major regrets. Maybe if I could live my life over, I would pay more attention to mathematics, and that would have allowed me to become an economist, which is what I really wanted to do. But outside of that, I have no major regrets in terms of being a teacher.
So were you forced or advised to be a teacher? Were you forced or advised?
As I said, at that particular time I needed to get a job, and that was the job that I saw. I saw an position advertised in the newspaper. I applied for it, I got it, and that was it. And I never seriously made any attempt to leave teaching per se. So yeah, so I suppose that answers the question.
So you're an international teacher, what?
I've been an international teacher for 17 years. 17 years now, yes.
How old are you?
Oh, I am going to be 53 years old in July.
So what other countries have you visited?
I've visited, all right, let's start in the region. Russia, Kazakhstan, Turkey. That's it in terms of the region. In the Western Hemisphere, I've been many places in the United States, many cities and towns in the United States. Puerto Rico, US Virgin Islands, Dominican Republic, Panama. That's about it.
Do you really think that traveling or visiting other countries will broaden people's horizon?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. There's no two ways about it. I strongly recommend that individuals should try to travel as much as they can because it does widen your horizon in many ways. So it is advisable for anyone. As long as you can afford it and you have the time, you should.
And I think you have practiced football before?
Practiced or played? Well, both actually. Both practiced and played. Yes, it is. Well, it used to be one of my favorite activities, but I've gotten lazy. I think in the spring I will try to play here. The last time I played football was October 15th, 2021 in Tashkent.
Who are you going to play with?
Who am I going to play with?
Yes.
Students, of course. There are no teachers here who play football. More than likely the grade 11 students.
If we will have another family day during this academic year, would you like joining Blue House football team?
Yes, because the last time I played table tennis, so this time I might try football. If I'm good enough to make the team.
What do you think, are you good enough to be in the team?
I hope so. I hope so, but I don't know. I think I've seen the team play, Blue House. I'm not sure. Maybe last year the members would have been different, but I'm not sure who the members are on that team. But we will see when the time comes.
What position do you play?
I like to play defense mostly because I like to. On a good day, I can think about the game and I can anticipate plays better. I like to be behind the play so I can see what is happening. So center half or right back.
Okay. About the job, what is the worst thing about being a teacher?
The fact that even after you leave work, you're still at work. It is one of the few jobs where even when you are home, you might still have work to do, lessons to prepare, or mostly papers to mark. So that for me makes it different and sometimes difficult than other jobs because you never ever leave the job, if you understand what I'm saying. Even on weekends, if it is during exam time or during a time when you have given a lot of assignments, on Saturdays or Sundays, or even on days off or holidays, you have to be marking papers or preparing lessons. So that for me is one of the drawbacks of teaching. Other jobs, once you leave, you leave. You go home and that's it. But teaching is not like that.
What was the lowest mark you gave?
Given? 0, of course. I've given many zeros. many zeros.
Wow.
Not often, but quite a few. Because remember, I've been teaching for 27 years, so I've given many zeros in my time. Why?
In what case do you give 0?
In a case where the question has not been answered, say, well, it's difficult to get 0 for an essay. More than likely, there has to be something in an essay that deserves a grade, but for reading, for example, or vocabulary or other tests where you can either be right or wrong, then definitely you can get a 0 for that. And in some cases, there are some cases where students have made no effort at all in a particular assignment. Maybe what they wrote was totally irrelevant, or they simply were off target or whatever. So I don't necessarily have a problem with giving zeros. What I have a problem with is giving hundreds. I don't like to give hundreds because I think it sends the wrong idea. So as long as I can find something to take off a mark from, I will.
So in the future, it's predicted that many jobs will be replaced by artificial intelligence. So do you think the
Teaching will be one of them?
Yes.
I often ask myself that question. It is possible, but not likely. The reason why I say it is possible is that with the use of AI and the ability of AI, students can actually teach themselves a lot of things. However, AI can't do everything, and then again you have to think about the human quality, the human characteristic, the human perspective, empathy, the ability to interact, and and the ability to analyze and to adapt to the personality of the student or the attitude of the student. So these are the elements which I think make human teachers irreplaceable. Because of course AI doesn't have a personality, right?
Yes.
And you can't speak to AI, it can't relate to you, it can't share, for example, life experiences, it can't give you advice, right? So in that sense, I think that AI cannot replace teachers. Replace teachers.
If it was possible, what would you do? If AI
Farming,
should
farming.
probably job?
If I was no longer able to teach,
Yes.
farming. Definitely farming. And I'm not interested in growing crops for food either. I'm interested in growing what is called horticulture, growing ornamental plants, flowers like orchids, roses, those kind of things. That for me would be the ideal life, to spend my days growing flowers and taking care of plants. I really enjoy doing that. I think I get almost the same satisfaction from doing that as I get from teaching. And that is something I've been interested in from I was fairly young.
What do you do on a regular day after the classes?
Apart from sleeping and eating, watching videos on YouTube, normally documentaries. Currently, I'm back in, and I have phases, I regard them as phases in my life. Once I get stuck on a particular topic, I spend my time accumulating as much information on that topic as possible until I felt I've gained enough knowledge or information, then I move on. So I currently realize that I'm now back in what I call my Vietnam phase, where I'm again interested in information related to the Vietnam War. So I don't know how long that will last. But usually current affairs, sports, and so on.
What's evidence about that war?
What?
What's evidence about that war?
Oh, where do you want me to begin? First of all, it is the Vietnam War. Most people don't understand that the Vietnam War didn't begin with the Americans. The Vietnam War started with the French. And then the Americans became a part of it. And so the last 20 years of the American War was the period in which America became involved. But the Vietnam War started before that with the French. And then after the French were defeated in 1954, then the Americans came in. And then before the French, the Vietnamese fought against the Chinese, and I do believe the Japanese as well. Yes? So the Vietnamese have a very long period of struggle, of which most people only know about the last 20 years, which is what is called the Vietnam War. But the Vietnam War itself lasted for more than 20 years. What fascinates me about the Vietnam War is how the mightiest army, most sophisticated army in the world, was defeated by basically simple, ordinary people, right? They didn't have any sophisticated arms, they didn't have an air force, they didn't have a navy, but yet they were able to defeat what was at the time the most powerful army in the world. So that is one of the things that I am fascinated with.
And we know that there were two sides in the war.
There are always two sides.
Apart from Vietnam, USSR and USA.
Yes, of course, USSR and China, because both USSR and China provided support to the Viet Cong, or the North Vietnamese, yes. I'm fully aware of that. And if it were not for that support, they would not have won.
And of course, you may support one side. Like, you may say that USA was really bringing freedom to Vietnam, or
That was the idea, that it was a fight against, it was a democracy versus communism. But I don't look at it that way. I don't see it in that sense, that it was a fight between democracy and communism. No, I don't see it that way.
And what side are you supporting? Do you support? Or would you support?
The Vietnamese. Because they were fighting, I view it as a liberation struggle. These people were fighting to be free. They weren't fighting because they wanted to be communists. They happened to be communists because of historical precedents that were set. But they were not fighting because they were communists. They were fighting because they were Vietnamese and they wanted control of their own country. That is my view, anyway.
So before coming to Uzbekistan as a teacher, what you imagined and what are your...
Well, before coming here, I was living very close to Uzbekistan. I was living in Kazakhstan, in Shymkent, which is maybe 2 hours away from Tashkent by car. And I had a lot of students and colleagues who were Uzbek. So I had a curiosity about Uzbekistan from then. But at that time, because Uzbekistan was a very closed country politically, it was difficult, well, at least for me, to get a visa to visit. My colleagues from England and America, it was all very easy for them. I think they didn't even need visas at the time, but I needed a visa. And it was a very complicated process for me to get a visa. So even though I spent 6 years living close by, I did not get that opportunity to visit. So when this opportunity came up, when I saw the job opening, I of course was very enthusiastic about it because I'd always wanted to see Uzbekistan and to find out more about what Uzbekistan was like.
Before that, have you ever heard about the word Uzbekistan?
Yes, but not much. Because I read a lot, and because I was interested in the Soviet Union, I knew a little bit about Central Asia in terms of them being former Soviet socialist republics. So that was another part of my curiosity too, in terms of wanting to find out more about these countries and what they were like. What do I like most about Uzbekistan? The safety. It's a very safe country. It is one of the safest countries I've ever been in. You don't have to worry about your personal safety.
Example?
For example, my country. In my country, it's not that safe.
So you work for those international schools in Kazakhstan, right?
Yes, I worked for the NIS, which is very similar to this program. Almost identical in that they would give exams to students, 12-year-old, grade 6, at the end of grade 6, and then they would take the best of the best students. And there was a school in each region. The difference between, I think, one of the main differences between those schools is that they had 2 streams, or 2 directions they were called. One was math, physics. So those schools focused on math and physics. And then the other schools focused on chemistry and biology. So the school that I was teaching at focused on chemistry and biology. The interesting thing about that is, in the schools that focused on physics and math, you had more male students, right? But in the schools focusing on chemistry and biology, there were a lot of female students, because the mindset is that females are more suited for, are more interested in chemistry and biology, because that will take you to the medical field or some other related field, while math and physics is more related to engineering and so on, which is more male dominated, or get more interest from male students. And those schools were also much larger, because the school that I was at, we had, I think, no less than maybe 600 or more students, 700 I think students. So it was a much larger school than this one in terms of both size, of course, and population. And it was both boarding and day school. So you had students who lived there, who went home on weekends, as well as students who just came on a daily basis.